Hi, my name is Bob and welcome back to Homestead, y'all. Well, it's time for our 3-month update, our monthly update on our monster tomato plants. They've been doing great since our last update the last month. I did find a problem with one of the plants up in the front over there, and I'll show you that with the camera in just a minute. We're going to measure them today. I have my 25-foot tape measure. I have my 10-foot step ladder set up. I know they're over 11 feet. They're probably closer to 12 feet tall, but we'll get an official measurement today. We've been picking tons of tomatoes. You can see there's tomatoes everywhere on them. They need picked again. So I'm going to pick the tomatoes today. We're going to go through, we're going to thin out a lot of these leaves. I'm going to prune them back. Now, I'm not going to prune them as hard as I did last month. It's later in the year. It's the middle of August now. We're getting 90-degree days. It's only cooling off into the 70s at night right now, and it's very humid here in Tennessee. We've just been having humidity in the upper 80s and upper 90s humidity with a heat index of around 100. So I'm not going to prune them back too hard, but I do want to prune them enough to where we can get in there, we can pick the tomatoes easy, and we can get plenty of airflow, because with this hot, humid weather, that's when your bacteria and your funguses start on your tomatoes, and that's one thing we want to prevent. So I want to cut enough leaves to where we get plenty of airflow through the plants, so that way we don't get any bacteria growing or any funguses. Of course, we're going to go back, we're going to cut the leaves off. There's a few leaves that are hanging down close to the ground. I've got a few leaves on the bottom that are starting to get brown spots, which tells me that's either a fungus or usually a bacteria when it's a brown spot. So I want to make sure I get those off, get them thrown away. Now I'll put those in a plastic bag and I'll throw those in the trash. Now any good leaves that don't have any fungus on it, then I'll throw those in the composter, and we'll compost those and they'll go back into the soil later in the year. But for now, let's go ahead, we'll start pruning some of these leaves back, and we'll get an official measurement. I can see some rain clouds coming, so I'm going to have to hurry up so I can finish up this video. Okay, before we get to pruning, let's go ahead and do some measurements, and let's get the measurements out of the way, and then I'll show you how many leaves I'm going to prune off these. Like I said before, I'm not going to prune a whole lot of them. I don't want to hurt the plants. I don't want them to think that they're being attacked by some kind of bug or species. So I'll prune them back enough to where we can get good airflow and we can get in and pick the tomatoes. Let's measure them and let's see how tall they are this month. Now remember, we're at 12 weeks today. So this is 12 weeks of growth, so let's see where we're at. Now this measurement won't be exact because I do have landscape fabric and it's pooched up a little bit right there where I'm at, but this is going to be pretty close to the height. Okay, I'm touching the top of the landscape fabric there. We are at 11 feet 6 inches. So 11 feet 6 inches on this particular plant. I'm going to see, I have cardboard down over here under the landscape fabric, so this one's going to be a little bit off also, but let's go ahead and measure it. See if I can get this tape down between the tomatoes. On top of the cardboard there, like I said, this will be close enough for me. This one's 11 feet 4 inches. Okay. And we'll do this one. It's not quite as tall. It's at 10 feet 6 inches. And then our last one over here, I'm going to show you what happened, what I figured out with it. It quit growing back in June, and I wasn't sure what was going on with it. It's back to growing now because I figured out what was wrong. So let me show you what this Amish paste plant looks like and what I found out what was wrong with it. Okay, this is one of our Amish paste plants. Like I said, it quit growing back in June. Last month when I did an update, I told you that it quit growing. I wasn't sure what was wrong with it. I knew it had to be something with the roots because it's getting the same amount of sunlight, it's getting the same nutrients, it's getting the same amount of water as the rest of these plants. And you can see how these leaves have died back. Well, when I follow this stem, and right here is the stem that it is, you can see the stem itself's yellow. The stem beside it on both sides are still green. So when I follow this stem back, it's yellow all the way back down to the ground. All the way out from where it comes from the main trunk of the tomato plant. So once it started turning yellow like that, I knew for sure then it was something to do with the roots. So I took my hands and I dug down into the dirt, just trying to be easy, because this plant is still producing tomatoes. We're still picking a bunch of tomatoes off this. It finally started growing again, and you can see it's up almost 7.5 feet tall. But I knew there was a root problem, so I got down in there and started digging, and lo and behold, ants started boiling out. Once I dug in there, I mean just as soon as I stuck my hand in there, ants started coming out. And I took a water hose and I put a water hose down in there, and they started bringing their eggs out. And there was an entire ant colony down here feeding on the roots of this tomato plant. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So what I did is I had a bunch of garlic that I had in some water, and I'll use it to spray plants every now and then just to keep certain bugs off of plants. So I took that water and I watered this tomato plant with it real well. And it did a pretty good job. Most of the ants got out of there. Right now I can dig down in there and a few ants will come up, but not near as many as it came up whenever I first found them. Well, the garlic water worked pretty good, ran them off. But then yesterday I went to water these plants and they've moved to this plant over here. Now this is our tallest plant. It was the 11 foot 6 inches. It's huge all the way around it. There's no telling how many feet around it is. But they've moved to this one. So yesterday I put garlic water in the soil on this plant, so I'm hoping it'll run them off from there. You know, we don't like using any chemicals. We use no chemical fertilizers. Everything's 100% organic. So I don't want to use any chemicals in the soil, because then the plant's going to pick it up, then it's going to be in our food. So that's why we don't use any kind of chemical sprays or anything. And so I'm hoping the garlic will run them off, and maybe it'll run them somewhere else away from here. I'm not sure. I've done some research on natural ways how to get rid of ants. They say cinnamon. I've tried cinnamon before. It does not work. I sprinkled cinnamon all around before ant mound, and it does not run them off. The garlic water seems to work the best on what I found. So if you know anything that'll get rid of ants that's natural, that won't hurt our soil, it won't hurt our plants, please leave it in the comments below so I can learn, and so everybody else that watches this video can learn. So what I'm going to do now is, all these dead leaves that are on here, I'm going to go around and pull all these off. I'll go back and I'll follow this down and I'll cut it. I'll take my pruners, I'll cut this off, I'll follow it all the way through and cut it off and get it out of the tomato plant, because these old leaves like this, right now they're dry because we're in a dry spell. But as soon as we start getting rain, those leaves will mold and it'll spread to the rest of the plant, and I don't want that. So what I'll do today is I'll go through, I'll pull all these off. I'm going to put these in a bag. I'm not going to put them back in my composter. I just dropped one leaf on the ground. I'm going to pick it up too, because if there's any mold already started on these, I don't want them on our tomato plant. So I'll go through today, I'll cut this back, and I'll keep an eye on it. That's another thing. By cutting all this off, I'll know if something new is wrong with my tomato plant. If the leaves start turning yellow, or if some of the stems start turning yellow, I'll know that is new and that I need to pay attention to it and see what's going on. So hopefully I can get the ants out of here, I can get the ants out of this one, and everything will keep growing good. But for now, let's go ahead and prune some of these back, and then I'll take care of this tomato plant. Now to prune these tomato plants, I have a good sharp pair of scissor pruners here. I've sprayed them with alcohol. I keep a spray bottle that has pure alcohol in it. That way I can always spray my pruners, so that way whenever I'm pruning back any kind of plant, whether it's a tomato plant or even flowers or anything that I'm pruning back, that I won't introduce bacteria back into the plant. But for now, what we want to do is we want to go to the inside of the plant and cut some of the biggest leaves away. So let me show you how I'll do that. I'm going to cut a couple of these outside ones just to give me room to get in there. But then I'm just going to reach my hand in and I'm just going to cut these leaves. Now you want to make sure you don't cut off blooms. And all these leaves that are still good will go in the composter. Any of them that have bad spots or fungus or bacteria, they're going to go in a plastic bag and they're going to go in the trash. You can see some of these leaves, they're 18 inches, 2 foot long. They don't need to be on here. But there is tons of tomatoes on this plant. I'll have to cut leaves back just to get to the center. You have to be careful because you don't want to pull your green tomatoes off. Especially on these little cherry tomatoes, the little green ones fall off easy. I'll work my way all the way around this plant, and then I'll climb on the ladder and I'll work my way around. But this is what we want to see. We want an open area. We want to give the pollinators plenty of room to get in there. Of course, I've seen tons of bees on these this morning. But we want to give the pollinators enough room to get in there and pollinate our tomato plants. If we don't, that's okay. Tomato is a self-pollinating plant. It's a perfect flower, so all you have to do is give them a good shake, and they'll pollinate themselves. And then some of these that are hanging off, I'm going to go ahead and take some of the leaves off, so that way they don't have as much weight on them, and they'll still produce tomatoes also. Like I said before, we don't want to prune it too hard. We don't want the plant to start dying on us. Last month I pruned it back to where you could see all the way through them, and I'm not going to do that this month. Any worms you see or find, feed them to your chickens. Contemplating next year doing a double cage design with these. If you watched our video earlier in the year how we made these, I used a triangle. I'm definitely going to open that up and put another side on it to make a box. But I'm thinking about making that and then doing another set around the outside, so that way all these that come off will have some support. And I'm also thinking about doing some kind of trellis overhead, so that way once they get up this tall, I can just let these vines lay on them and then maybe pick the tomatoes right from underneath it. I don't know. We'll see. Undesirable leaf. You can see the brown spots on it and the yellow spots starting. If the camera can focus in on that. Those are the ones that you want to take off because that's bacteria that's starting on that leaf. This was the leaf down toward the bottom, so I've cut it off. I'm going to set it over here to the side and it'll go in the plastic bag and it'll be disposed of in the garbage. Okay, so here we go. That's the pile of leaves. I've cut off this one side. You can see how we opened it up. Not real hard, but pretty good. Where we can get in, pick tomatoes. I can see a few more leaves that probably need to be cut off, but you can see, of course, these are sweet 100s, and it's just loaded with tomatoes. So if you have any questions or comments about our monster tomato grow, please leave it below. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, so that way you'll be notified next month whenever we post a video updating these tomato plants. I expect them to be closer to 14 feet unless something happens by the next update. They've been growing almost a foot a week, so they're going to be tall. Of course, our tomato cages are 16 foot tall, and our goal is to reach the 16-foot mark. And I'm not sure if we're going to make that this year or not, because we had a rough start of the year. We had some colder weather, so the plants didn't grow real good for a week or two. But we'll see how it goes. And as always, thanks for watching.